The young woman walked into the music academy with a quiet confidence. She had always loved the piano, even though she did not talk much about her talent. Her fingers had a life of their own, moving across the keys with a grace and control that made even the simplest notes sound beautiful. But at the academy, the teachers saw her as just another student, someone who needed more training to reach a higher level. They did not know the truth about her skill, and that was something she preferred. She liked her music to speak for itself. The day began like any other, with students sitting in the practice rooms, practicing scales, exercises, and pieces assigned by the teachers. She took her seat at the piano, her posture calm, her mind focused. She had received her assignment a few days earlier. The teachers had chosen a piece known for its difficulty, something that challenged even advanced students. They expected her to struggle, to make mistakes, to show that she needed more time and instruction. They did not know she had been playing since she was a child, that the piano had been a part of her life for as long as she could remember. She opened the sheet music and looked at the notes. To anyone else, it would have looked complicated, full of tricky rhythms, fast runs, and sudden jumps. But she saw it as a puzzle she had already solved in her mind. Her fingers itched to play, and a small smile appeared on her face. She knew she could do it, but she also knew this was not a time to show off. She needed to appear like she was struggling, like every other student. In the classroom, the teachers walked around watching the students. Some were tapping their pencils. Some were murmuring to each other about the progress of their students. She sat quietly, waiting for the right moment to start. When the teacher called her name, she took a deep breath and approached the piano. Her steps were calm, measured, almost as if she was walking on a stage she had been familiar with for years. The first notes she played were soft, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters. But the teachers could already feel something different. There was a clarity in her tone, a precision in her timing, and a smoothness in her touch that was unusual for someone they thought was average. She continued, her fingers gliding over the keys, moving faster and faster. Yet every note was perfect, every chord balanced and resonant. The room was filled with music that was rich and full, something that seemed too mature, too controlled for a student they believed was inexperienced. The teachers exchanged glances. One whispered to another, "She is playing well, but it's too early to say if she has really mastered it." They had seen good students before, students who could perform parts of a difficult piece, but they assumed she would falter soon. They did not realize that her confidence came from years of experience, from hours of practice in secret, away from anyone's eyes. As she moved to the faster sections, the teachers noticed how easily she handled the complicated passages. Her fingers flew over the keys with precision, her body relaxed, yet fully in control. It looked effortless, as if she had been born knowing the piece by heart. Every note rang out clearly, every rhythm was perfect, and yet she never seemed to rush or hesitate. Her music had emotion, depth, and a subtle power that captured everyone listening. Other students were watching now, some with wide eyes, some with mouths slightly open in surprise. They had been struggling with simpler pieces, and here she was, playing something they had only dared to look at in their dreams. Some whispered to each other, wondering who she really was and why they had never seen her play like this before. She finished the first part of the piece, letting the final note hang in the air for a moment before gently closing the lid of the piano. The room was silent for a few seconds, as if everyone was catching their breath, processing what they had just heard. The teachers were stunned. They had expected to correct mistakes, to offer guidance, to help her improve. Instead, they found themselves unsure of what to say. This young woman, quiet and humble, had played a difficult piece with skill and emotion that surpassed their expectations. One teacher finally broke the silence. "That was impressive," they said, though their voice sounded unsure, almost hesitant. Another teacher nodded, still looking at her with surprise. They began to realize that their assumption about her being just an ordinary student was completely wrong. But she did not react to their words. She simply gave a small nod, acknowledging their attention but not letting it distract her. Her focus was always on the music, not the applause or approval. She returned to her seat, her calm demeanor unchanged. Other students were now more curious than ever. They wanted to know more about her, to understand how she could play like that. Some approached her after class, asking questions about her practice routine, her experience, and how she learned to play with such mastery. She answered politely but briefly, not revealing all her secrets. She preferred her music to show her talent, rather than words. The day continued, but something had shifted in the atmosphere of the academy. Teachers began to watch her more closely, unsure if they were witnessing a prodigy or someone with a natural gift they had underestimated. The other students started to pay more attention too, inspired and intimidated at the same time. She moved through her day quietly, helping where needed, observing, learning, but always returning to her music when she could. The piano was her world, and it gave her a sense of peace and fulfillment that nothing else could. After the last class, she stayed behind in the practice room. She played a few more pieces, not for the teachers or her classmates, but for herself. Her fingers moved gracefully, creating melodies that filled the room, leaving a sense of beauty and calm in the air. She knew that one day her talent would be recognized fully, but until then, she was content to play in her own way, at her own pace. The world might not yet understand her abilities, but that did not matter. The piano was her companion, and she trusted that her music would speak louder than words ever could. The teachers left the room, still talking quietly about what they had witnessed. They were beginning to understand that they had underestimated her, that she was far more than just another student. Yet, they also realized that this young woman carried her talent with humility and grace, and that her journey was just beginning. They could only imagine what she would achieve if given the proper recognition and opportunities. She packed her things slowly, savoring the last moments of the day. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm glow through the windows. It was a quiet reminder that each day was a step forward, a chance to grow and create. She smiled to herself, thinking of the future, of the music she would play, and of the lives she might touch with her talent. She did not play for fame or praise. She played because the piano was part of her, because it gave her joy, and because she knew that true mastery came not from showing off, but from a deep connection with the music itself. As she walked out of the academy, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction. Today had been a small victory, not just because she had impressed her teachers, but because she had stayed true to herself and her passion. The world might not yet fully recognize her, but she did not need it to. Her music was enough, and for her that was all that mattered. After the day's classes, the young woman returned home quietly. She lived in a small apartment not far from the academy. The walls were lined with books and sheet music, and the piano in the corner seemed like an old friend waiting for her arrival. She placed her bag down gently, took a deep breath, and sat at the piano. Today had been intense, but she had learned something valuable. She realized that no matter how much people assumed about her abilities, the truth would always be revealed through her music. She opened her practice book, looking at the difficult piece the teachers had assigned. To them, it seemed almost impossible, but she saw it differently. She studied each note carefully, noticing subtle changes in rhythm, small technical challenges, and emotional expressions that were meant to be brought to life by someone truly skilled. She spent hours going over every passage, perfecting her touch, listening to the sound she created, adjusting it until it felt right. Each practice session was a meditation for her, a way to understand not just the music but herself. While she practiced, she thought about the teachers at the academy. They had underestimated her like so many others had before. It was not that she wanted to prove them wrong in a boastful way, but she felt a quiet determination to show them the truth, not through words, but through performance. She wanted them to see that real talent was not just about effort or time spent. It was also about passion, dedication, and a natural connection with the instrument. She played slowly at first, making sure every note was clear and every chord resonated fully. Then she increased the tempo, challenging herself, pushing her limits. She imagined the classroom, her teachers watching, and the faces of other students who had doubted her abilities. That image gave her focus, but she never let frustration or pride enter her mind. Her goal was always the music itself, the feeling she could create when her fingers met the keys. As the evening wore on, she took short breaks, sipping water and stretching her fingers. Her neighbors occasionally peeked in to see the young woman playing, captivated by the music that seemed to fill the building. She did not mind the attention. For her, sharing music was natural, even if she did not speak much. The piano spoke in ways words could never match. It told stories, expressed emotions, and built connections silently. She understood that deeply. While practicing, she reflected on her journey with the piano. She had started learning when she was very young, guided by a mentor who had recognized her talent early on. She had been persistent, practicing in secret when necessary, and never letting discouragement stop her. Over the years, her fingers had grown confident, her mind had become disciplined, and her heart had developed a deep love for the instrument. Now, playing the piano was as natural to her as breathing. Each piece she touched became alive, and each performance told a story that words could never capture. She practiced the difficult passages repeatedly, ensuring that each transition was smooth and seamless. Her control over dynamics, tempo, and emotion was precise. She was aware that this piece was not just a technical challenge. It was a test of expression. She worked carefully on the phrasing, ensuring that every note had intention, every pause had meaning, and every chord conveyed feeling. She imagined herself performing in front of the teachers again, and the thought filled her with calm confidence rather than anxiety. In the midst of practice, she noticed a small journal she had kept since childhood. She opened it and found notes from her first lessons, reminders of techniques, exercises, and pieces she had learned. Reading through it, she smiled, remembering how far she had come. Each small step had led her here, to a level of mastery she did not flaunt, but that was deeply ingrained in her. It was a mix of talent, effort, and love for music that had shaped her into the musician she had become. Days passed and she continued her private practice. She focused on perfecting her posture, the precision of her finger movements, and the expression in her playing. Even when she was tired, she found joy in the process, in the feeling of creating sound that resonated with emotion. Her practice was never about showing off. It was about understanding the music, respecting its complexity, and allowing it to flow through her naturally. Every session deepened her connection to the piano and strengthened her skill. Back at the academy, teachers noticed her quiet dedication. They began to see glimpses of her potential through her performances, but they still had no idea of the depth of her talent. They were impressed, yes, but they assumed it was just improvement from diligent practice. They did not realize she had already mastered these techniques years before. Their assumptions were about to be challenged in ways they could not predict. The young woman also started exploring her own interpretations of the piece. She experimented with tempo, phrasing, and dynamics, giving it her unique touch. Each time she played, she discovered something new, a subtle emotion that had not been apparent before. Music became more than notes on a page. It was a story, a reflection of her thoughts and feelings, a conversation with anyone who would listen. She knew that when the time came to perform in front of the teachers again, they would hear not just skill, but soul in every note. Evenings turned into nights, but she remained at the piano, absorbed in the music. She did not need an audience to inspire her. The piano itself was enough. She remembered the first time she had touched it as a child, feeling an immediate connection, an unexplainable bond. That bond had never faded. It had grown stronger, guiding her through every lesson, every challenge, every performance. And now, facing this difficult piece assigned by her teachers, she felt ready, confident, and serene. She also began to think about the students around her at the academy. Many of them struggled with similar pieces, practicing tirelessly but still falling short. She remembered her own struggles when she was their age, and she felt a quiet empathy for them. Talent, she knew, was only part of the journey. Persistence, patience, and love for the craft were equally important. She wanted to inspire others, but she also understood that recognition and attention were not her main goals. Music itself was her reward. Throughout her preparation, she faced moments of self-reflection. She questioned whether she should reveal her true abilities now or wait. The thought of performing at the highest level filled her with excitement, but she also felt the responsibility that came with extraordinary skill. She did not want to intimidate or embarrass anyone, but she wanted her talent to be acknowledged. She realized that timing, patience, and the right moment would be crucial to make the strongest impact. Finally, after many hours of practice and reflection, she felt a sense of readiness. The piece that had once seemed so challenging now felt like an extension of herself. She knew every note, every pause, every expression. She had mastered not just the technical requirements, but the emotion, the flow, and the story within the music. She was ready to share it, to let her talent be seen and heard, but always in her own calm and unassuming way. Before going to bed that night, she sat quietly at the piano one last time. She played a few soft notes, letting them drift through the room. It was a personal moment, a quiet celebration of her progress and dedication. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Tomorrow would bring the opportunity to perform again, and she felt prepared, not because she wanted to prove anyone wrong, but because she was ready to let the music speak for her. The piano was her voice, and she had finally perfected her message. The next day, the young woman returned to the music academy, her calm confidence as steady as ever. Today was the day she would perform the difficult piece in front of her teachers again. She walked through the hallways, noticing the students chatting nervously about their own performances. Some glanced at her, curious, but she offered only a polite nod. She did not feel the need to boast or announce her presence. Her music would speak for itself. The practice room was already filled with other students waiting for their turn. She took her seat at the piano, placing her hands lightly on the keys, feeling their familiar weight beneath her fingers. She glanced at the sheet music one last time, not because she needed it, but because it helped her settle into the rhythm and emotion of the piece. The teacher stood nearby, talking quietly, unaware of just how skilled she truly was. When the teacher called her name, she rose calmly and moved to the front of the room. Every eye turned toward her. Some students whispered to each other, wondering if she had been practicing secretly, or if her talent was naturally exceptional. The room was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. She took a deep breath and sat down, her posture perfect, her fingers poised. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, feeling the music before even touching the keys. Her first notes were soft, delicate, almost hesitant, but the sound that emerged was clear, pure, and confident. The teacher's eyes widened slightly. They had expected minor mistakes, hesitations, or struggles, but they could sense immediately that something extraordinary was happening. The young woman played with a natural flow, as if the piano itself was an extension of her body. Every note carried meaning, every chord was balanced, and every transition was smooth and precise. As she continued, the faster sections approached. Most students would stumble here, but her fingers moved with ease and speed, each note crisp and deliberate. She did not rush. She controlled the tempo perfectly, allowing the emotion of the music to shine through. The teachers exchanged nervous glances. They had assigned this piece expecting to challenge her, but instead, it became a demonstration of her mastery. Other students watched in awe. Some leaned forward in their chairs, captivated by the fluidity and grace of her playing. The room felt transformed. The sound of the piano seemed to fill every corner, resonating deeply, pulling the attention of everyone present. Whispers began to circulate, not about mistakes or difficulty, but about the beauty, skill, and emotion she displayed. No one had seen anything like this before. She moved seamlessly through the difficult passages, her expression calm but focused. Her hands flew over the keys with precision, each finger striking the right note at exactly the right moment. She added subtle touches of dynamics, softening and strengthening the sound in just the right places. Every part of the piece was alive, full of feeling and technical skill. Even the teachers, who were experienced musicians, could not hide their surprise. As she reached the climax of the piece, her playing became more expressive, more commanding, yet never overwhelming. The notes soared and fell like waves, carrying emotion and energy that left everyone breathless. She did not look at the teachers. She did not need to. Her connection was with the music, with the piano, and with the story she wanted to tell through sound. The room was silent except for the music, a rare stillness that made every note more powerful. When the final chord rang out, she held it just long enough for the sound to settle into the room. Then she gently released the keys, closing the lid of the piano. There was a moment of absolute silence. Everyone was processing what they had just witnessed. The teachers were speechless, their expectations shattered. Students looked at each other with wide eyes, realizing that the quiet, reserved young woman before them had just played a piece that many considered impossible. One teacher finally spoke, their voice a mix of admiration and surprise. "That was remarkable," they said. Another nodded, equally stunned. They had seen talented students before, but this was different. She had not only executed the technical aspects flawlessly, but she had brought the piece to life in a way that made the music itself unforgettable. There was depth, emotion, and a control that betrayed years of experience they had never imagined she possessed. The young woman rose from the piano, acknowledging their attention with a small nod. She did not smile broadly or seek applause. Her satisfaction came from the act of playing itself. The teachers, however, were now fully aware that they had underestimated her. They had thought they were assigning a challenge, but instead, they had witnessed mastery. After the performance, some students approached her hesitantly. "How did you do that?" one asked softly, eyes wide. She responded politely, giving simple answers, explaining that practice and focus were important, but not revealing the full depth of her experience. She wanted her music to speak louder than any explanation. The atmosphere in the room had changed. The teachers, who had previously viewed her as an ordinary student, now looked at her with respect and curiosity. They wanted to understand more about her abilities, to learn how she had developed such skill, and to consider how she could contribute more to the academy. They realized that this young woman had something extraordinary, something that could inspire other students if nurtured correctly. The young woman quietly returned to her seat, listening to the murmurs of awe and admiration from the other students. She remained calm and composed, not letting attention or praise distract her. She had always played for herself first, for the love of music, and this had not changed. Yet, she understood that her performance had left a mark on those who had witnessed it, and that her talent could no longer be overlooked. Later, the teachers gathered to discuss what they had seen. They were honest with each other, acknowledging that their assumptions had been wrong. They realized that they needed to approach her differently, to offer guidance that would help her reach even greater heights, and to recognize her as someone far beyond their expectations for a student. They also knew that her humility and focus were rare qualities, and that nurturing such talent required care and respect. The young woman, meanwhile, returned to her practice after class. She did not let the excitement of her performance sway her focus. She continued to refine her techniques, explore interpretations, and deepen her connection with the music. The piano had always been her anchor, her way of expressing herself without words, and she remained committed to that connection. She knew that true mastery was not a one-time performance, but a continuous journey of growth, understanding, and emotion. Over the next few days, word spread about her extraordinary performance. Students who had been skeptical or curious were now inspired. They approached her with questions, admiration, and a desire to learn from her. She responded with patience and humility, offering guidance without arrogance. Her presence at the academy became a source of motivation, a quiet reminder that dedication, passion, and skill could overcome expectations and assumptions. Through it all, she remained focused on her music. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required constant effort, reflection, and a deep connection with the instrument. Each practice session, each performance, each note played with intention was a step forward in her journey. The respect and admiration she had gained from her teachers and peers were important, but secondary to the joy and fulfillment she found in creating music. By the end of the week, the teachers fully recognized her abilities. They began to treat her not as an ordinary student, but as someone with exceptional talent, worthy of special attention and guidance. They also realized that her humility and focus were rare, and that they could learn from her dedication. The young woman had transformed not only the way they viewed her, but also the way they viewed music itself, reminding them that true mastery comes from a combination of skill, passion, and connection. As she left the academy each day, she felt a sense of quiet accomplishment. She had faced the challenge set by her teachers and had not only succeeded, but had exceeded expectations in a way that inspired those around her. Her journey was far from over, but she had taken an important step, demonstrating the depth of her talent and the strength of her dedication. The piano remained her constant companion, guiding her, challenging her, and allowing her to share her voice with the world in the most profound way possible. After the performance, the young woman returned to the practice room alone, letting the silence surround her. The sound of her playing earlier still echoed in her mind, and she felt a quiet satisfaction. Today had been significant, not because of praise or attention, but because it had revealed a truth she had kept private for so long. Her skill, her dedication, and her love for the piano were finally beginning to be noticed. But she remained humble, knowing there was still much to learn and many pieces to master. Meanwhile, the teachers gathered in a small office at the academy. Their conversation was filled with surprise, admiration, and a hint of embarrassment. They had underestimated her. They had assumed that she would struggle, that the piece would reveal gaps in her technique. But instead, she had shown a level of mastery that few musicians ever reached. One teacher admitted, almost in a whisper, "We had no idea she was capable of this." Another nodded, realizing that they needed to reconsider the way they approached her training. The young woman's talent was undeniable, and they had no choice but to acknowledge it. The teachers decided to ask her about her background. They wanted to know how she had reached such a level, and whether she had received formal training outside the academy. When they approached her later, she looked up calmly from the piano. Her eyes were steady, her posture relaxed. The teachers asked about her experience, about her journey with the piano. She spoke softly, sharing that she had started learning at a very young age and had received private lessons that helped her develop her skills. She explained that the piano had always been a central part of her life, a source of comfort, joy, and challenge. The teachers listened carefully, their expressions changing from curiosity to awe. They realized that her skill had not come from a single source or a few months of practice. It was the result of years of dedication, of disciplined training, and of a deep personal connection with music. They had been so focused on their assumptions and expectations that they had failed to see her true potential until now. The young woman's quiet humility and steady focus had masked a profound talent that now could no longer be ignored. Word of her performance spread quickly through the academy. Students who had previously seen her as quiet or ordinary now approached her with respect and curiosity. They asked about her techniques, her practice routines, and her approach to interpreting music. She answered patiently, giving advice without boasting or exaggeration. She encouraged them to find their own connection to music, to practice with patience and intention, and to respect the instrument as more than just a tool for performance. Some students expressed envy, though they were careful to hide it. They had seen the ease with which she played difficult pieces and realized the gap between her skill and their own. But most students were inspired. They began to work harder, knowing that true mastery was possible if they combined talent with dedication. The young woman, however, never allowed herself to be distracted by attention, admiration, or envy. Her focus remained on the piano, on learning new pieces, and on refining her existing skills. The teachers, meanwhile, began to reconsider her role at the academy. They realized that she could be a source of inspiration and instruction for others. They invited her to perform in small recitals, to mentor students, and to participate in special programs designed to challenge her further. She accepted these opportunities with quiet grace, always mindful that her primary goal was her own growth and the joy of creating music. She did not seek fame or recognition, but she understood that her talent could positively influence others if shared thoughtfully. As the days passed, the young woman's reputation grew. Visitors to the academy, including local musicians and music enthusiasts, came to hear her play. Each performance reinforced what the teachers and students had already realized. She was a master of her craft. Her playing was not just technically flawless. It was expressive, emotional, and deeply moving. She had the rare ability to communicate stories and feelings through music, to reach listeners in a way that transcended words. Despite the growing attention, she remained grounded. She continued her private practice sessions, focusing on the nuances of her technique and the emotional depth of her interpretations. She experimented with different styles, exploring classical pieces, modern compositions, and her own arrangements. Each session was a new discovery, a chance to deepen her understanding and connection with the piano. She understood that mastery was a continuous journey, not a final destination. Her teachers began to involve her more actively in the Academy's programs. They asked for her input on challenging pieces for other students, invited her to demonstrate advanced techniques, and encouraged her to share her interpretations during group classes. She approached these opportunities with humility and patience, always focused on fostering learning rather than showing superiority. Her example began to shape the culture of the Academy, inspiring students to strive for excellence while maintaining respect for the music itself. Over time, the young woman's story began to spread outside the Academy. Local music circles and competitions started to take notice. Invitations arrived for recitals and collaborative performances. Each opportunity was carefully considered, and she approached them with the same dedication and focus that had always guided her. She understood that recognition was secondary to her passion for music, but she also realized that these opportunities could help her share her gift with a wider audience, touching more lives through her playing. Back at the Academy, she continued to practice the difficult piece that had first revealed her mastery. Even though she had performed it successfully, she revisited it daily, exploring new interpretations, refining her technique, and deepening the emotional expression. Her teachers observed her commitment and were impressed by her discipline. They recognized that true mastery was not about a single performance, but about consistent effort, reflection, and an unending desire to grow. The young woman also began to consider her future more seriously. She thought about advanced music schools, collaborations with other musicians, and opportunities to teach or mentor. Each decision was weighed carefully, with the understanding that her choices would impact her growth as a musician. She remained committed to her principle of humility, ensuring that every step she took was grounded in her love for the piano and her dedication to excellence. Despite the increasing attention, she maintained her daily routines. She practiced, explored new pieces, and reflected on her music. She understood that external recognition was temporary, but the skill, understanding, and joy she gained from music were lasting. Each note played was a step in her ongoing journey, and she approached each day with gratitude, patience, and focus. By the end of this period, the teachers had fully acknowledged her abilities. They adjusted their approach, providing guidance that challenged her without limiting her creativity. They encouraged her to explore new compositions, experiment with expression, and share her insights with other students. Their respect for her talent was genuine, and they recognized that she had changed the way they viewed music, talent, and learning. The young woman had transformed not only her own path but also the environment around her. Her presence inspired students, guided teachers, and enriched the Academy. She remained humble, focused, and dedicated, letting her music speak for her. In every performance, practice session, and interaction, she demonstrated that true mastery comes from passion, discipline, and a deep connection with one's craft. Her journey was just beginning, but her impact was already profound, and the world of music was starting to take notice of a young woman who had quietly, but powerfully, revealed her extraordinary talent. After her talent became widely recognized within the Academy, the young woman's days began to change in subtle but meaningful ways. Students sought her advice more often, teachers consulted her on advanced techniques, and she started receiving invitations to play at small recitals outside the Academy. Despite the growing attention, she remained calm and focused. Her goal had never been fame, It was always about connecting with the music, exploring its depths, and expressing emotion through sound. She began her days as usual, waking early to practice before the academy's classes started. The quiet mornings gave her the peace she needed to focus fully on her technique, interpretation, and musical expression. She revisited the difficult piece assigned by the teachers, exploring new ways to bring out its nuances. Every day, she discovered something new within the notes, a subtle rhythm, a hidden emotion, a phrase that could be softened or emphasized differently. She found joy in these discoveries, knowing that mastery was not about playing a piece perfectly once, but about exploring it endlessly and deeply. At the academy, her presence began to influence other students. Many who had previously doubted themselves or compared themselves to others started practicing with more dedication. They watched her approach to music, her quiet discipline, and her careful attention to detail, and they realized that talent alone was not enough. It required focus, patience, and a love for the craft. She did not offer herself as a model of superiority, but her example inspired others to push their own limits. Teachers also started to notice the impact she had on the academy. Her skill and humility created a new atmosphere, one where students were motivated to learn rather than compete. The teachers invited her to demonstrate advanced techniques during lessons, explaining her interpretations and approach to different passages. She accepted these opportunities with grace, never showing arrogance, but sharing her insights in ways that encouraged others to explore and experiment. Her influence began to reshape the way lessons were conducted, making them more interactive, reflective, and creative. Outside the academy, invitations to perform began arriving more frequently. She was asked to play at local music clubs, charity events, and small concerts. Each performance was carefully considered. She did not want to be overwhelmed or distracted by external recognition, but she saw these opportunities as ways to connect with a broader audience, to share the emotions and stories hidden within the music. At every event, she focused on creating an experience, not just playing notes. Her performances were intimate, heartfelt, and deeply moving, leaving audiences impressed and inspired. With each performance, her confidence grew, but her humility remained. She never allowed applause, praise, or recognition to define her. She understood that these were temporary and external, while her connection to music was lasting and internal. Even when audiences were amazed, she returned home quietly, sitting at her piano and playing alone, enjoying the simple joy of creating sound. These moments of solitude and reflection kept her grounded and focused on what mattered most. Her practice sessions became more varied and experimental. She began exploring different styles, combining classical techniques with modern compositions, and sometimes improvising her own pieces. Each experiment was a learning opportunity, helping her develop flexibility, creativity, and a deeper understanding of musical expression. She documented her discoveries in a small notebook, noting techniques, emotional cues, and performance tips, not for publication, but to help herself grow as a musician. The students continued to admire and follow her example. Some began forming small practice groups inspired by her dedication, sharing insights and helping each other improve. The young woman did not lead them formally, but her influence was undeniable. Her quiet presence, consistent focus, and gentle guidance created an environment of learning and encouragement. The academy, once a place where students were judged mostly by technical skill, now became a space where creativity, expression, and dedication were equally valued. Her teachers observed this transformation with pride and surprise. They had always aimed to challenge students technically, but they realized that true mastery went beyond technical skill. They began to rethink their teaching methods, incorporating more opportunities for students to explore interpretation, expression, and emotional connection. The young woman's example had shown them a path they had not considered, one that valued depth, patience, and artistic understanding. Even with all the attention, she maintained her daily routines. Early morning practice, careful exploration of pieces, reflective moments, and consistent dedication remained central to her life. She understood that this discipline was the foundation of her success and the reason her music resonated so deeply with others. External recognition might come and go, but the strength and depth of her skill were built through daily, mindful effort. Over time, she also began to mentor individual students more directly. She helped them identify areas of improvement, offered techniques to develop control and expression, and encouraged them to find their own connection to the music. She emphasized that talent was only part of the journey. Focus, persistence, and love for the craft were equally important. Her guidance was always gentle, supportive, and patient, never demanding or critical. Students responded with enthusiasm, and many began to grow in skill and confidence under her mentorship. Outside the academy, the young woman's reputation continued to grow. Local music circles and enthusiasts began talking about her performances, describing her as a musician who could convey emotion in ways that transcended technique. Each performance became an opportunity not just to play music, but to touch lives, to create experiences, and to inspire others. She understood the responsibility of her skill and approached each event thoughtfully, balancing preparation, expression, and presence. Despite the growing admiration and opportunities, she never lost sight of her own goals. She continued to challenge herself with difficult pieces, explore new techniques, and refine her interpretations. Every note she played, whether in practice or performance, was an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to deepen her understanding of music. Her focus on the journey rather than the destination kept her grounded and motivated. By now, her influence within the academy was clear. Students who had once struggled now approached her for guidance. Teachers sought her input on curriculum and technique, and the environment of the academy had shifted to a more collaborative, creative, and expressive space. The young woman's presence had not only demonstrated mastery but also inspired a culture of growth, humility, and artistic exploration. The young woman understood that mastery was an ongoing journey. Each performance, each practice session, and each interaction with students or teachers was part of a larger path. She approached every day with dedication, curiosity, and a quiet sense of purpose. Music was more than a skill or talent for her. It was a way of connecting with herself, with others, and with the world around her. Her journey was not about recognition, but about the fulfillment and depth she found in creating, exploring, and sharing music. As the academy year progressed, the young woman continued to play, teach, and inspire. Each day brought new challenges, new pieces to master, and new opportunities to share her gift. Her influence grew steadily, not through words or self-promotion, but through consistent excellence, humility, and dedication. She had become more than a student. She was a role model, a quiet leader, and a source of inspiration for everyone around her. In this stage of her journey, she realized that true mastery was not about perfection, applause, or recognition. It was about dedication, continuous learning, connection, and the ability to share one's gift with authenticity and care. She remained committed to these principles, confident in her abilities, and motivated by the endless possibilities of music. The young woman had found her path, her voice, and her place, and she walked it with humility, passion, and quiet strength. As the academy year progressed, the young woman's talent continued to shine, attracting more attention both inside and outside the school. Invitations to perform at concerts, local events, and small competitions arrived steadily. She approached each opportunity thoughtfully, never allowing excitement or pressure to distract her from the music. For her, each performance was a chance to share emotion, tell a story, and connect with the audience. She understood that her skill was a gift, and she approached it with respect, humility, and care. When she performed at the first large recital outside the academy, the room was filled with musicians, teachers, and music enthusiasts. The audience was eager, curious to see what had already been described as a remarkable talent. She walked calmly to the piano, her posture straight, her expression serene. She did not seek attention or applause. She simply focused on the music, letting her fingers and emotions guide her through each note. The first chords resonated through the room, soft yet commanding. The audience listened intently, immediately captivated by the clarity, precision, and emotion in her playing. As she moved through the piece, The music seemed to flow naturally, powerful yet gentle, intricate yet effortless. Each note was deliberate, each phrase full of feeling. The audience could sense that she was not just performing notes, but communicating a story through her instrument. Her teachers, watching from the back of the room, were filled with pride and astonishment. They had long known she was talented, but witnessing her play in a new, larger setting made it clear that her mastery went beyond technique. She had an innate ability to express emotion through music, to capture attention without needing words, to inspire others simply by sharing her gift. The audience responded with quiet awe, completely absorbed in the performance. After the recital, many approached her to offer congratulations and admiration. Musicians wanted to discuss techniques and interpretations, students wanted guidance and advice, and teachers praised her focus, dedication, and skill. She accepted the attention with modesty, offering small, polite smiles and thoughtful answers. She understood the value of encouragement, and she shared her insights to help others grow, never to elevate herself above anyone. Over the next few months, her opportunities continued to grow. She played at charity events, school recitals, and community concerts. Each performance was different, yet consistent in quality and emotion. She continued to challenge herself with more complex pieces, exploring new compositions, styles, and interpretations. Her practice sessions remained focused and disciplined, always prioritizing depth of understanding over flashy technique or applause. Her influence also extended to students at the academy. Many were inspired to improve, to dedicate themselves to their own practice, and to explore music more deeply. She became a mentor in small ways, offering guidance, feedback, and encouragement. She never demanded attention or recognition. Her presence alone served as an example of how dedication, passion, and humility could lead to mastery. Her mentorship helped cultivate a culture of respect, learning, and inspiration within the school. Teachers continued to involve her in programs and recitals. They asked her to demonstrate advanced techniques, interpret challenging pieces, and guide other students. She approached these responsibilities with grace and focus, ensuring that her influence was constructive and supportive. She knew that mastery was not just about personal skill, but also about helping others find their path and develop their abilities. Her quiet leadership began to change the way the academy functioned, fostering collaboration and inspiration rather than competition and judgment. As her reputation grew beyond the academy, more opportunities arose. Invitations to regional concerts, competitions, and collaborations arrived steadily. Each one required careful preparation and reflection. She remained methodical, ensuring that her performance would convey emotion and meaning rather than simply technical skill. She focused on interpretation, phrasing, dynamics, and emotional connection, understanding that true artistry went far beyond playing the correct notes. Her daily routines remained consistent. Early morning practice sessions, careful exploration of difficult pieces, reflection on expression and technique, and moments of quiet improvisation continued to structure her life. She understood that this discipline was what had made her extraordinary, and it was what would continue to allow her growth and mastery. No matter the opportunities or attention, she stayed grounded, valuing process over outcome, music over recognition. During one particularly significant recital, she was asked to perform a piece she had been studying for weeks. The audience included accomplished musicians, teachers, and critics. She approached the piano calmly, sensing the importance of the moment without feeling pressure. She began to play, her fingers moving with confidence, precision, and grace. Each note carried emotion, each phrase told a story, and each chord resonated with depth and meaning. The audience was mesmerized, experiencing the music not just with their ears, but with their hearts. When the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of silence, followed by heartfelt applause. The young woman acknowledged it with a small nod and a quiet smile. She did not bask in the recognition. Instead, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment in knowing that the music had touched others. She understood that her role was not to seek approval, but to share the beauty of music, to inspire, and to communicate emotion. After the performance, she was approached by teachers and musicians alike. They praised her technical skill, emotional depth, and interpretive creativity. Students asked questions about practice techniques and performance tips. She responded with patience and clarity, always emphasizing discipline, focus, and connection with the music rather than shortcuts or superficial methods. Her humility and sincerity made her guidance meaningful and inspiring. As time went on, her influence expanded further. She participated in collaborative performances with other musicians, exploring new styles and arrangements. She continued to mentor students, offering insights and encouragement. Her reputation as a dedicated, skilled, and humble musician became well known. She was not seeking fame, but recognition followed naturally because of the authenticity and depth of her talent. The young woman also began to consider her future more intentionally. She reflected on the paths available to her: advanced music schools, professional performance opportunities, collaborations with other musicians, and teaching. She weighed each choice carefully, guided by her love for music and her desire to grow as a musician. She understood that every opportunity required preparation, focus, and thoughtfulness, and she approached her decisions with patience and clarity. Through all of these experiences, she maintained her daily practice and personal connection with the piano. She explored new compositions, experimented with expression and interpretation, and refined her techniques. She understood that mastery was a lifelong journey, one that required dedication, reflection, and continuous learning. Each day offered new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to deepen her understanding and connection with music. By the end of the year, her achievements were clear. She had performed in multiple recitals, influenced students, inspired teachers, and touched audiences with her music. Yet, she remained grounded, humble, and focused. She knew that her journey was far from over, and that true mastery would require ongoing effort, exploration, and dedication. She approached each day with discipline, joy, and a sense of purpose, always keeping her love for music at the center of everything she did. The young woman had transformed not only her own life but also the environment around her. She had shown that talent alone was not enough, that humility, discipline, and a genuine love for one's craft were equally important. Her music, her example, and her guidance had inspired others to pursue their own potential, creating a ripple effect of growth, learning, and artistic expression. She had become a quiet leader, a mentor, and a source of inspiration, demonstrating that true mastery was not only about skill, but also about character, focus, and connection. As she looked ahead, the young woman felt a sense of calm confidence. The opportunities, recognition, and admiration were meaningful, but they were not the goal. Her focus remained on the music itself, the emotion, the expression, the stories she could tell through her playing. She understood that this dedication, passion, and humility were the foundation of her mastery, and she remained committed to them as she continued her journey. Through every performance, every lesson, and every practice session, she continued to grow. She inspired others through her skill and example, influenced the culture of her academy, and left a lasting impression on those who had the privilege to hear her play. She had achieved recognition, but she had also achieved something far more valuable: a deep, personal connection with her craft, a dedication to excellence, and the ability to share her gift with the world in a meaningful, heartfelt way. Her journey was a testament to the power of dedication, humility, and passion. It showed that mastery is not defined solely by skill or recognition, but by consistent effort, love for the craft, and the ability to inspire and touch others. The young woman had achieved a level of mastery that few reach, not through showmanship or boastfulness, but through quiet persistence, deep connection, and unwavering focus. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her place, and she walked her path with grace, humility, and unwavering dedication. The world of music had gained a remarkable talent, and she had gained the fulfillment, growth, and joy that came from truly living her passion.